Jeanie McIntosh's exhaust was about to drop off. It's her age. We've tried getting her into an old biddy's home to give her neighbours a break, but nobody actually wants her. So we thought we'd stick within walking distance of home for this week's episode. A not too painful on the old neuropathic toes sort of walking distance at that. Which was why we ended up back at the Apple store in Wyresdale, a location we'd visited a couple of years ago, but that was so nondescript at the time we realised we could resurrect it and nobody had noticed. The Grade 2 listed Wyresdale Park, to give the Victorian Hall and its surrounding buildings some historic context, was designed by that ecclesiastic architect Edwin Paley in 1856. Nowadays it still operates as a sheep farm, which is why the lamb butties are always so fresh. But it also sports a number of craft shops, a cafe where they used to store apples, which is why it's called the Apple Store. It's got nothing to do with any Lennon-McCartney copyrighted stuff. A keeper's cottage, whatever one of them is. Some glamping grounds, which are still illegal in a number of Arab states. And a wedding venue, mainly for young, expensive orange people who like to have stone-built walls in the backgrounds of their wedding photographs. They've added an overflow car park for the cafe recently in the shadow of Nicky Nook. It's amazing what permission can make its way through the planning department when you're loaded enough. It's got a woodland walk with it, not exactly looking at its best at this time of year to be honest, more of a mud bath than a ramble, leading from the car park to the adventure-filled outdoors experience of the accompanying lake. Said woodland walk, like the rest of Wyresdale Park, is notably dog-friendly, which was why I trod in a carefully concealed but amiable dog turd whilst filming and almost ended up skidding headlong into the lake. Once across the runoff weir we entered the middle-class therapy park proper. It's a bit like the sequel to Farmer Parr's really, only with fewer llamas. In particular, we like the old-fashioned, circa the 1980s craft shops, containing local artisans and their wares and smelling strongly of potpourri peppered with parental funding. There were hand-soldered statues and statuettes embellishing the passages outside said shops, one of them depicting the dumb cow from Lancashire legend. The legend involved witches, a giant bovine and Parlick Fell, if memory serves. The statue resembled a rusted version of a butcher's prime cut diagram. Another metal construction is of a very large dog, presumably to match the very large turd I'd trodden in earlier. The aromatic waft of roast lamb sizzling as we passed the cafe was delicious, it must be said. Although, surprisingly, Jeanie McIntosh couldn't smell it due to malfunctioning sinuses. With a hooter the size of hers, you'd have expected her to pick up the scent back in Scorton. Unfortunately, we don't have any more properties to remortgage, so we had to pass on buying a meal and just drool at the struggling BMW drivers working themselves up to an NHS-funded heart attack instead. You can tell I was in a good mood, can't you? It must have been all the balmy weather we were having. Down the narrow lane that circumnavigates Lean End as we left, Jeanie McIntosh got into an argument with a Sherman tank-sized four-wheel drive. The roads around the Pennines are comparable to the dirt tracks in deepest, darkest Peru, don't you know? She was forced to reverse several miles at great personal risk to the nearest passing place, before having her car sprayed with mud without so much as a thanks for your cooperation from the driver of the oncoming tank. After listening to Jeanie McIntosh's complaints about the incident for the next 3/4 of an hour, I decided to look up the phone number for Dignitas and book her an appointment. As you've probably gathered, it's a short film this week. Subscribe if you want, click like, it apparently helps the algorithms, and we'll do our best to be back again as soon as possible with another episode of Lancashire Footnotes.